The medal of courage in the heart of a small American town, nestled between rundown streets and struggling neighborhoods. There lived a man named Marcus Williams, a quiet, reserved man in his mid-30s. Marcus had returned to his hometown after serving in the military, hoping to find peace and purpose. What he found was a community fractured by poverty, prejudice, and the constant fear of violence. Marcus had always been a protector. Even as a young boy, he looked out for the other kids in his neighborhood, whether it was breaking up a fight or standing up to bullies. As an adult, his sense of responsibility only grew. His experiences in the military shaped him into a resilient figure, both physically and mentally. But it was his deep understanding of his community's struggles that made him stand out one warm autumn evening. Marcus was walking home after a long shift at the local community center, where he worked, as a mentor for at-risk youth. As he turned the corner near the park, he saw a group of teenagers loitering near the basketball court. They weren't playing, but instead, they were jeering and mocking a couple of younger kids, trying to enjoy a game at first. Marcus thought about ignoring them and continuing on his way. But something in him stirred. He couldn't just walk away. He approached the group slowly, his broad frame casting a shadow over them. The teenagers stopped laughing and turned to face him. They had all seen him around town, knew of his military service, and, like many people in the community, respected him, but the respect was mostly silent. Marcus wasn't the kind of man who sought out attention. "Hey," Marcus said calmly. "This isn't a place for bullying." One of the teens, a lanky white boy with a smirk on his face, stepped forward. "What are you going to do about it, big guy?" he sneered, trying to make his voice sound tough. The air thickened with tension. The other kids in the group stood still, watching Marcus carefully. Unsure of what would happen next, Marcus took a deep breath, looking them all over. Then, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, polished bronze medal. It was the one he'd received years ago, an award for valor during a particularly harrowing mission. The medal wasn't much to look at, but it carried a weight of history, sacrifice, and pride. Marcus held it up so the teens could see it glint in the fading sunlight. "Let me tell you something," he said softly, his voice steady. "This medal isn't just for bravery in battle. It's for protecting those who can't protect themselves. For standing up when no one else will." The teenager who had stepped forward seemed to flinch at Marcus's words, his cocky attitude faltering. Marcus let the silence stretch for a moment, letting the weight of his words sink in. Then, as if realizing they were facing more than just the usual neighborhood tough guy, the teen's expressions shifted. The lanky boy backed away first, his bravado cracking. One by one, the rest of the group followed suit, muttering under their breath as they turned to walk away. The intimidation gone from their posture, Marcus stood still, his chest rising and falling with the calm of someone who had seen worse but was determined to never allow it again. "Go home," he called out after them, his voice softer now. "And think about what you're doing." The teens didn't answer. They just kept walking, disappearing into the shadows of the street. The two younger boys who had been on the receiving end of the bullying stood in stunned silence for a moment before they looked at Marcus with grateful eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Williams," one of them said quietly. Marcus gave them a small, reassuring smile. "You're welcome. Just remember, you're stronger than you think." As he continued down the street toward his modest home, he felt a quiet sense of pride. It wasn't about the medal. It wasn't even about the teens. It was about the community, about protecting it, about standing up for what was right, no matter how much opposition you faced. The next morning, the news spread through the town, racist teens scared off by local hero. The story, as usual, was told through the lenses of local gossip. But one thing was clear: Marcus Williams was no longer just a quiet man. He had become a symbol of resilience, of standing tall against hate and injustice. And as for the teens, they didn't return to the park for weeks. They never forgot the image of Marcus holding that medal, the weight of the past, and the courage it represented. It was a lesson they would carry with them for the rest of their lives. Sometimes, a single act of courage could change everything in the end.